We are on a mission.
A mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy.
On the Catalyst Pharmacy podcast,
You will get actionable business advice
hear stories from industry leaders,
and share a laugh with us,
fuel your passion for pharmacy.
one conversation at a time.
Hello.
What's up?
Hey guys,
We're in Miami.
I am in Miami.
So Stan or Stanley?
Stan,
Stan.
Got
Okay.
it.
Who, does your mother call you Stanley?
when I'm in trouble.
Only when
Yeah,
you
only when
say-
you're in trouble. Yeah, okay.
only when
Is
it's
there a
bad.
middle name going on? I actually think though in trouble it would have to be the whole thing, like Stanley Warren.
Right.
Stanley Warren. Or is it a middle name?
Stanley James Warren Jr.
Oh, does he get the whole thing?
Oh, I get the whole thing.
Oh wow, Stanley James Warren Jr.
It's really bad.
What are you thinking?
Really bad when you use that.
So, if you were expecting Marcia, apologize.
So not as good looking as her. So I'm
And
sorry
that's
about
her
that.
husband, so he can say that. So, I don't know that you've met Mark Bivins. He's our SVP of sales,
Something like that.
something like that.
Yep.
Basically, he comes in every day, get it done.
I only through the name on the phone when I was in one of my stores in Manhattan.
Oh, right on.
I always saw Marcia and Mark Bivins come up depending on which extension was calling.
Oh, that's
Interesting. So you had a and I'm Jeff Key. I don't know if we've met in person before.
We haven't.
funny. With all the trade shows and everything else, it's surprising.
I was at one trade show with PDS and then that was it.
So you're not really a trade show kind of guy.
This year after PDS shut down, I've been kind of bootstrapping like my own endeavor. So
Okay.
it wasn't in the budget this year.
I gotcha. A little bootstrapping going on.
I like it.
So you had stores in Manhattan?
No,
In New York.
I'm not a pharmacist. I'm a consultant now, but I was a technician for most of my life and then store manager with hopes of being a district manager and just never could leave the pharmacy.
So when you saw either Mark or Marcia's name come up, what role were you in at that point in your life?
At that point, I was the VP of pharmacy operations. So I called myself basically an owner without equity.
VP of Pharmacy Operations. All right. And
Nice.
who are you? And who was that with?
That was with the pharmacy on the upper west side of Manhattan.
So it's all right. So let's just this is our first time really to meet. So just give us a little background. I know I got written down on a sheet of paper, but just kind of take us through your journey.
Sure.
You kind of just threw a little bit of it out there, but
So I did not want to work in the pharmacy at all. One day I was 16 and my mom said, just apply for CVS. So I have to go run and pick up some drugs anyways. At first it was a hard game of refusal, but eventually I walked in, saw a cute blonde girl behind the counter and was applying before I could finish blinking. And then fast forward 22 years, I went from technician to every position in the pharmacy besides pharmacist.
and that was at CVS. The
at
first
CVS.
that first technician job was CVS.
Yep.
Anything
at
ever happen with the
CVS.
blonde?
Nope.
No.
Nope. I was 16, she was 18, and I was very insecure and like shy at that age. So I didn't have a chance, but it's all right.
It's good to have dreams. Gotta have
It is.
dreams.
It is.
Gotta have dreams.
Gotta ask a lot of girls to dance if you're gonna dance with one. Isn't that right,
I'd
Mark?
get-
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yes. Whatever's the appropriate thing to say.
Sure. Well, you have a
with
son.
Marcia watching.
No, you have a high school son going.
I do.
to
I do.
So-
Man, that's interesting. My goodness. Oh my God. So
all right, so keep going. So you tried all these different roles, and then you ended up at PDS. What did you do at PDS?
So I was a consultant mostly around MedSync and Pioneer. It was the last year that they were with us.
Okay.
So there wasn't, it was a very great experience. It taught me how to consult and use my knowledge that I gained in the last 20 years and put it into a format. And now the next year, it's been kind of interesting to figure out how to become really effective at what I know.
Huh. He said that like that was the last year that they were with us.
Mm.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right.
It sound like PDS passed away.
Well,
Hey,
Well-
they took the private equity bullet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the complexity of things there with the private equity and the COVID. I think those are two things. Kind of took them out. All right, so now you have your own gig. So tell us about that gig.
So now I do consulting around pharmacy operations and finance. I still have a few clients from PDS, and then now I work on site with a one primary client where I've kind of further developed the system, because MedSync alone won't really save a pharmacy. And in fact, I've learned that MedSync alone can actually destroy a pharmacy.
Interesting.
how do you mean? Can you say more there?
Yes. So if you don't have visibility into your DIR fees or the calculations, if you haven't hired Ben to put them in, MedSync doesn't, just because MedSync will grow your volume probably 20%, but if you don't have visibility into your DIR fees, sometimes people will fill like dexlansoprazole or lidocaine patches thinking, hey, I just made $200. But if they saw what their DIR fee was, they lost $400. And then they put that on auto refill thinking, hey, I'm making, $4,800 this year. And meanwhile, they're losing $9,600.
Got it. And he's referring to, for people listening, Benjamin Jolly and DRFEs. So,
Benjamin.
yep.
Yes.
Shout out to
He
Benjamin.
texted me yesterday.
Okay. So you said you obviously believe. Go ahead. Believe in MedSync. Super expert in it, like I would say, implementing that in Pioneer as well. So what are the other downstream impacts that when you go in and go, hey, look, you really should do this. It comes with caution, because you could just be refilling something that's really detrimental to your business over and over again. What are the other downstream advantages that you're trying to make sure everyone's understanding when you're walking in and doing this?
So the first thing is, getting visibility and cleaning up your own like basic operations. As a pharmacy, we are in the game of dispensing medicine. So prescription comes in and a prescription goes out. All the clinical and other things are nice to haves, but at the end of the day, we have to dispense medicine to get to the other nice to haves. So we have to do the dispensing well. And what I mean by that is your workflow, does it work for your pharmacy? When I walked into this one client that I'm at now, I could feel the stress level was always at an 8, because everybody was on top of each other. All the workstations were too close to each other. They didn't have visibility into the patients walking in the door. They didn't have visibility into the net profit on the labels. So anytime I needed to go and interact with anybody, I was in everyone's way all at the same time. They were always all in each other's way. So once we cleared that up, we took the stress down to, a constant 2. And that allows them to focus on all of the other tasks that are involved. So, getting your workflow in check first and starting to build MedSync. And now, thanks to the combo shop with long-term care, that is pretty much a must-have, in my opinion. It has done wonders for all the clients that we've had using it. And on top of that, then, the next step further, which is something that I kind of learned at PDS, but there was something missing to it. But around the, I don't know if you remember the smart dispense system, that it was kind of what got them a lot of popularity at one time, but there was some gray area stuff that's not the strategy that I would say is a long-term
Where there was some
win.
clawbacks. Yeah, you're talking about the
Single source generics and things like that.
trying to switch different meds.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there is, value to that if you're people talk about constantly how they want to prescribe and they want to be at the top of their license. And yet, as a non-pharmacist, now that I've gotten more involved in this, I go through people's data and I'm like, well, why do you have 47 patients getting simvastatin? That drug's terrible. You pay nothing for it. You get paid nothing for it. And, we could add value by increasing, a simple drug that you're being you're being recorded or measured on how well you perform in this area.
Right.
So why not focus on getting your patients the best quality drugs or care on those specific categories and actually becoming an expert in that in those niches?
Interesting. It should be noted that a stress level of 8 in Miami is like a 12 somewhere else, because you're really messing up the Miami vibe.
For real. For real. We've seen it too, though. You go walk into someone doing MedSync, someone's pharmacy, and they have strong MedSync program and good adoption of it. It is completely night and day, stress levels, smiley faces. Nobody's running around at a 10. You're right. It's such a different environment than the very reactive kind of model that you've seen some in the past. Totally agree.
Yeah.
With you.
So in your kind of consulting gig, do you do any of the outreach for them? Are you doing any of the kind of, one of the big things we're talk a lot about is getting out of the pharmacy. Are you doing some of that? We're going to talking to public health and doctors' offices and things on behalf of them?
It is 100% me teaching them how to do it.
Okay.
And this particular client, it's actually been kind of a blessing in disguise, because the language barrier, there's a language barrier. Most of their population doesn't speak English, or English isn't their first language or primary language. So it doesn't behoove me to jump in and do it for them. It's been it's been really good for me to be patient or to become patient and learn to, instill my knowledge into the team. And it's also helped really get them, super engaged.
So is it Spanish we're talking here, Miami?
Yes.
So do you speak Spanish?
My Spanish, mi español un poquito.
It's very little, right? So you're using an app? So you're consulting with them. Are you talking into the phone?
I mean, everybody, the staff all speaks,
they speak decent. Okay.
Everybody's bilingual at the pharmacy. It's just the patients, even if they do speak English, a lot of times they prefer to speak Spanish. So, or like,
coming in,
I'm the random white guy there. So they're like, what is this guy doing?
Mark's son is in Spanish today.
Yes.
And I think you were saying you wanted to learn some Spanish.
I do. I do. Like we took a trip to Spain, I don't know, a year ago at this point. And Marcia she was using Duolingo, I guess, or something like that for a good year I felt like prior to it. And all I heard in our house when there was time for her to do that was different language lessons in it. But it's something that's just, I don't know, like the rest of the world already knows multiple language most of the time. We're kind of, I think, ignorant or arrogant, whatever it is in that way of,
so you don't have to go to,
like we don't have to.
Don't have to go to Spain, just go spend a couple of weeks in Miami.
That would be fun.
Get some Cuban coffee.
Be good.
Do you like Cuban coffee?
Absolutely.
Do they do that in their pharmacy that you consult with? Do they do the little?
There's a little bakery like literally steps away that I go to every day that I'm there. So I love it. I
went to a grocery store one time there to look at their, they had a central workflow piece from McKesson. And that was the deal. When you walk through the door in the grocery store, they gave you a little, it really felt like almost a thumbnail.
So into that though.
Of Cuban coffee. It was really neat, just the kind of different kind of culture and stuff in the different areas and some of the,
I mean, prior to Miami, I was in Manhattan, so this is actually very slow for me.
Slow?
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the Miami vibe is a slower vibe till about...
Till about 11 p.m.
Yeah, till about midnight.
I don't know. New York's probably pretty wild too.
Yeah, that's true.
At that time, so.
I was in New York during COVID and like all the riots and protests and whatnot. That was actually part of the decision to leave eventually, was that the energy had just changed so much. And I guess working on the front lines at the time, going back and forth from the pharmacy, getting to actually see the devastation of COVID, it changed my perception to really, it wasn't a pleasant place to be. But then when I got to Miami, it was like, oh, what's COVID?
Oh.
Huh.
That's fair.
So if you're not going to trade shows or anything, I guess you know Ben Jolly from PDS? Is that how you...
For LinkedIn, I write a lot on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or I run my mouth on LinkedIn a lot.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. So Pharmacy Stan is the brand. I'll call it the brand or the persona on LinkedIn. that you kind of write under, I think. Like, what goes into that? What are you thinking? Is that something that you want to get your thoughts out about certain topics? Just kind of explain it to us a little bit.
Are you angry, Stan?
Am I angry? No.
No.
In Miami, it's really hard to be angry in Miami.
I agree with that.
You're doing something
Although it is
wrong
kind
if
of
you're
cloudy
angry here.
today. Is that cloudy? Or is that just the way the window is?
No, it is cloudy.
Oh yeah, it didn't happen very
But
much.
one of the few days.
All right, so keep going about the LinkedIn. You're writing on LinkedIn. What's the strategy?
So originally when I moved to Miami, I wanted to exit like the pharmacy side of things. And I had this crazy idea to do a startup where I would try to bring EpiPens to market for $50 or less, and then delved into this whole research on that. Raising the money is the easy part, but actually making it happen, not a chance. And when I realized how hostile people were about the idea, because it's typically a money-making area. So to bring in a non-money-making or non-money-making is the only goal idea, it was not necessarily well received. So I came back to pharmacy and realized I have plenty of value here. But originally that's why I started writing on LinkedIn. And then at some point it kind of morphed into shouting at PBMs and, kind of in some cases being a voice for pharmacists who can't speak out from the chains, or because they have an independent and their contract says, hey, if you put anything bad about us on social media, we can go for you.
So today's couple of things from today's newspaper. What do you think about unionization of pharmacy?
Like, why didn't it happen 20 years ago?
What are your thoughts?
I actually did 6 weeks at Walgreens in 21. Being that I'm not a pharmacist, I wanted to get my certification to immunize and, kind of stab some people, help out. And when I experienced what they were going through, I'm so happy for them, because it wasn't pharmacy. The chain had absolutely given up on filling prescriptions, and it was only about immunization and testing. And it's not that isn't important, but you have a job and a role to fill for the community first, which you ignored to go record profit year after year after year. And, at this present day, one of my former employees and I still keep in touch from when I was in CVS in Charleston, South Carolina.
Not the blonde.
No, not the blonde.
Shucks. I was going there. Maybe there's still hope. It's only 2 years difference now. All right, keep going. So you're saying
I'm in Miami for that. I mean, come on. Anyways, but one of the stores that I used to work at has now 100 less tech hours than it did to do the same volume. And it was already one of the most difficult stores 10 years ago.
Yeah. And that's just prescription volume. That's probably not even immunization volume, right?
Yeah, that was, we only did flu shots back then. So, what they're asking employees to do is just, they don't deserve to keep making record profits if they're not going to take care of the employees and the public safety. So
is Walgreens making record profits?
Man, I used to read those 10Ks like a nerd. You're a finance person. You can appreciate that, I think, Stanley.
Are they just suffering as well as everybody else?
They just got new leadership. They just had a regime change. That's for sure. And somebody from the payer space, I remember, right, or the PBM space.
From Cigna, I believe.
Yeah. Hot take. Not really that hot of a take. I could see them merging.
Yeah. I mean, there's still this huge PBM problem. And the problem with the PBMs, and this was recently admitted, they just lower the price every year. They're not thinking about why or how. They just turn it down. As long as they have the network they need, they're fine. And one of the PBM people looked at a pharmacist and they were like, you have to be making money because you keep signing the contracts.
Yeah.
It's like, that is totally and completely disconnected from reality. Speaking of which, what do we think about the new Clear pharmacy plan? Is that what they called it?
It's called Clear or something like that. They're trying to project this transparency, I think, is what they're trying to do with the naming of it. I can't remember the name of it, but there's also has this other acquisition cost element to it.
Yeah, they're trying to battle the cost plus of Mark Cuban.
They totally are.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an answer to that.
And I think one of the independents hit base with me yesterday, and they're already sending out the contracts on it. And it's acquisition cost plus 5% plus $5.
$5 is the dispensing fee?
Yeah. Which on the surface sounds good, but they're using some weird number thing that I've never heard. Well, it sounds great on brands.
Yeah,
actually,
fair. Yeah,
you know, because you're losing your butt on brands, not taking brands anymore. So I think the brands might be better and the generics are probably a little worse. Depending on how you buy it, you know, the generic acquisition costs of generics. I think they're using WAC, NADEC, and some other thing I've never heard of.
The predictive acquisition cost.
Cost.
Still don't know.
Which, like, how do you sign a contract? And I don't, you know, and I don't even have access to that number.
It's lesser of logic too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's the lesser of those as the cost.
It's always the lesser. That's been the equation. It's always the lesser of like 3 or 4 different variables on every contract, and every contract is different.
Well, that eliminates MAC. That contract no longer has MAC on it. But if I can take 6 numbers and always take the lesser of them, it's not bad. But the other thing is I'm signing something for a number that I don't have access to.
You don't.
You know, I don't know what that number is. But it's interesting. It means they're kind of scared of the Mark Cuban or maybe what the Blueberry Pharmacy, some of the cost plus.
It'll be mix based too, I think, right? Like it'll be whatever your mix is will, to me, dictate whether it's a plus or a minus for you. I think from that perspective, if you're 98% generic and you've almost shunned all brands, 5% actually sounds bad to me in the generic space. You know, like if you've gone to like where I'm not really dispensing any brand at all in my pharmacy, almost to that point,
right? Then
that's probably a bad deal.
Yeah, because you're dispensing a $5 generic and you get a 5% margin. That's 25 cents.
Yeah, 100%. It's like it's just that part's like, ugh.
So that's trivial.
Sounds ugly.
Markup. I mean, I would be upset that you aren't on combo shop with so much business and not paying 0 DIR fees on your brands anyways.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like your brand should, if your brands are scary, like there's definitely alternatives. You know, like we get paid well on Humana, but we don't get paid up for brands well on any other plan. So I mean, the last show, Sean had talked about the dual eligibility being very valuable. And that's another thing that I forgot to mention. That's part of my downstream. You know, if your patients are heavily dual eligible, you can move them around to fit your needs. All but maybe 2 weeks of the year. I think it's just after open enrollment ends, you can't change their plan. So there's a lot of solutions out there, but we seem to not take advantage of them.
Gotcha. So if they're dual, you could find something that benefits them along with sustainability for the pharmacy. That's what you're saying. Right.
Or move them to if they're LTC eligible, move them to an LTC eligible plan if you're combo shop.
Yep. You talk about LTC at home, move them to a plan that accepts that.
How complicated? Like, have you helped people start up / register for that basically go through all that? Give us a quick, like, how complicated would that be for a pharmacy? If someone who's out there listening going, I keep hearing about it and I keep hearing about it more and more. How difficult? You apply for a second NPI NCPDP. You go get recredentialed or get credentialed with, Express Scripts, Optum, and sorry, I'm drawing a blank. You do your independent contracting that you wouldn't do with your PSAO, and then you contact GeriMed, and from there it's pretty much straightforward. As long as you have 10 patients that you can do it for, like actually provide LTC services for using medical at home. Okay. Which I haven't seen a pharmacy that's not a big hurdle. That's not a big hurdle at all.
There's some concerns. So even without getting another MPI, if I have this is my understanding, if I have a long-term benefit in the plans that I have, I can use a code that says, hey, that person's in long-term care.
Like a clarification code that you submit with the claim.
And it pays differently, non-DR codes, et cetera. So I can move a person to those plans. But then there's always the double NPI. But some of that, I don't think the contracts specifically say pharmacy at home or long-term care at home. To be considered long-term care, there's some criteria, right? You have to have special packaging. You have to blank to be considered long-term
certain
care.
Services too, right?
Right?
Yep.
And they're just determining that this is a long-term care patient meeting the criteria for long-term care. They're just in their house rather than in the facility. And so there's some concerns of audit and concerns that, some of the contracts are going to clarify that.
Ideally, you've already done your CYA because you're doing MedSync. If you have MedSync operating efficiently, going into combo shop, should be just like flicking on a light switch. But that's also if you're not treating it as just an auto refill program. If you're actually calling your patients and speaking to them and, finding out that they're having side effects or that they are changing their doses and taking action on that, then that's using it correctly. Otherwise, yeah, you can get yourself into trouble with auditing.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let's talk. When you go into when you're engaged, so one of your engagements when you're doing this and you're helping someone implement MedSync the right way, staffing wise, what do you need internally as a champion? What do you have to change the mindset on with some of your staff? What are some of the hurdles that you've had to coach an owner through to get to the other side?
It's really about having a good partnership between your lead tech and one pharmacist. It doesn't have to be the PIC, and it definitely doesn't have to be the owner. And the biggest hurdle is also not letting the pharmacist be the owner of it. It should be a lead tech's job. The pharmacist has too many other things operationally that they're required for their clinical knowledge that, it's 100% the tech's, kind of responsibility to shoulder this program and make it go forward. So, once you get that in place and then just kind of having just coming up with a plan. I'm going to start with all my Caremark patients, all my Humana patients, all, so-and-so patients, and then just sticking with it. Because if you make progress with it, like even when I was at PDS, we taught people to grow their program maybe 10% per quarter. And that's extremely doable for any pharmacy. That's actually pretty slow for a lot of pharmacies. They were able to grow a lot faster than that. But I guess the other thing is not to grow too fast, because if you grow too fast, then you don't understand what you're actually doing. And then, you're creating a separate workflow from your primary workflow that will in the future make your life so much easier. But in the beginning, you're simultaneously doing two things at once. And that's why it's difficult in the beginning and why most people fail. So I guess the other requirement is giving your lead tech dedicated time away from the chaos. There's no responsibility for them to pick up the phone, help patients, do anything, because in most cases, they have 10 to 15 phone calls per day, especially in the beginning. Let them make 10 to 15 phone calls for an hour or two. They're done with that. Then they can go back to the workflow and stick with taking care of all the reactionary stuff that comes in.
That makes sense. So incremental approach is what you're saying, and build in bandwidth, right?
Oh yeah. It's definitely got to be a slow staged approach to get all of the benefits. Even still, this store that I've been with them on site for 5 months, and sometimes I still catch things that I taught them way back when, but I didn't bring it, I don't mention it again, or I don't really make such a point of it. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh, they're not doing that because I didn't tell them, hey, that's what you guys have, this is very important to the process. You can't skip that.
The why behind it.
Right. I mean, even for me, I hear so many people in the industry talk about dispensing being dead and let's move on to clinicals. But I've seen that dispensing can be profitable. And also to me, I'm you can't just ignore dispensing and move on, because PBMs have already said they will come for the rest of it.
Right.
And it's the highway or foundation you're building to run the services is the way I see it, right? You have to have a fantastic road to run on. MedSync helps you do that, I think is what your stance is. Sounds like.
And it's further to, based on some of the stuff that I saw in the like the notes to bring into like AI into the discussion and the future of pharmacy. You know, I think MedSync can be pretty much automated at some point because it's building a predictable workflow that you create a system where you call the patient, you know, 5 to 7 days prior to the day that they get their delivery or their pickup, and you can automate most of it. You can't automate the relationship, and that's the one thing that people will continually neglect in healthcare in general is you cannot automate person-to-person contact no matter what. Even if the AI reaches a point where humanoids look just like me and they can act like me, people will distrust it if it's not a human.
You know, and that's too much of that. If we can do that really well, so can Amazon or, you know, so can the big guys. It's interesting. But I do think, so you're thinking AI in pharmacy to help automate MedSync.
To automate a lot of things. As I mentioned, you know, it's not just MedSync, but, you know, once you have a patient registered and put them through MedSync, you know, then you can have like a whole menu of services that the AI recommends and keeps track of and sends appointment reminders and kind of facilitates the operational piece of it, but not the relationship piece of it.
Yeah. Been playing a lot and thinking a lot about AI in pharmacy. And the one thing you keep just running into is the, you know, today AI is for entertainment purposes, you know, and there's a big barrier when you move from for entertainment purposes to a healthcare, to a medical instrument, right? You look, it does you could today have, you can have AI tell you, hey, what would I tell a patient who had this problem, and this problem, was taking this drug, and this drug, and I just gave them this drug. And it can do a very good job, right?
Oh, yeah.
I can say, make it Southern, and it'll, it'll give it a little Southern draw.
Bless your heart at the end or something.
A little bless your heart. And I could take a product like Cynthia, I think, and I could run that into a person who's saying it. Now that looks, you could tell sometimes it's not, but you know, AI hallucinates and there's all kinds of problems. Yes, this looks good to me. This one that I just did, but what about the next one? You know? So I think there's still a lot of unknowns in using AI for that, or even recommending, you know, if AI recommends without an intervention.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Especially with your, you know, the way board licenses are and things like that too. Right?
But we think you could, you know, as long as a pharmacist reviewed it, you know, if you think a lot more things like that with kind of think about a PV2 of AI, you know, where I'm.
Well, and sorry, this is part of my personality. Like I love to be contrarian or play devil's advocate. And
Stanley James Warren Jr.
The same guy that blasts PBMs on social media. No, I can't imagine.
I'm poised. I'm ready.
I can't imagine Stanley is going to have a contrarian take. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So in regards to the hallucinations and accuracy, if you had a patient ask a pharmacist to describe a prior authorization to them, if you asked 100 pharmacists, you would probably get 95 different answers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think where we've looked at it too and tried to explore is to just making the mundane easier, right? Like data entry and things like that, to where if you could just completely almost eliminate it to where someone still just verifies it. Now I think the way things work today, you'd probably still have to do that, but I think that's probably where we've invested more, especially with staffing models having to be squeezed as much as they have to be squeezed.
Yeah, imagine in order to eliminate data entry.
Yeah.
And the pharmacist checked it, 98% of the time is right, and 2% of the time he fixed it. Pharmacy techs could be working on MedSync. They could be working on...
Yep, totally. Yep. And that can go to the bottom line as well.
The flip side too, though, the PBMs can use AI, and they can catch everything that everybody does very quickly. For example, if you're misbilled, you know, if you bill an insulin incorrectly, an eye drop, if you're billing if you're doing a bunch of test claims, like all of those patterns will be able to be picked up almost instantaneously.
And be like China, they would just automatically deduct it from your payments. Just
Couple it with quantum computing in the near future, and yeah.
Well, be good. The other side of that is that the good guys, it's us, could use AI to help pharmacists not make mistakes that might get them in trouble. And hopefully we could be a lot more agile than some of these big PBMs. And hopefully you see the PBMs, everybody, I'd hate to be them. I really would hate to be running that business because everybody hates you right now.
Well,
it's the only thing that the U.S. government agrees on today is PBMs are bad.
Yes.
That's the only thing. They don't agree on anything else. They don't agree. Parties don't agree among themselves.
Yeah, no.
But Democrats are fighting over Palestine, and the Republicans are fighting over shutting down the government. But they all think PBMs are bad.
Yeah.
So
got to take the momentum too.
Yeah, you can take that momentum and
run with it.
My only comment is,
I hear it. Something's coming.
You seem to be holding back. Go ahead.
Pharmacists voted. A lot of them like to have voted for their own demise. PBMs got their power, as did all big business back when Citizens United versus FEC was instated or overturned. But yeah, once they gave corporations unlimited spending power in politics, that was when PBMs, gained all their authority.
Yeah,
they got their ERISA protections right after that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you're legitimately, and that's where a lot of the antitrust stuff, if you're legitimately driving down, the government looks at driving down the cost for the consumer, right? And PBMs have been able to say we're driving down costs for the consumer so far. But as things become more transparent, starting to see, that's really not true. You're really driving up
and with
costs.
the introduction of high deductible plans too, started to really squeeze the consumer a little bit more.
But when the government's control of business is related to reducing costs for the consumer, and pharmacists are complaining we're not getting paid enough, it just the initial thing rings kind of
that, and you can almost prove consumer harm too with sustainability of pharmacy. If you shut 2,000 pharmacies in the next 6 months, you're going to have a really strong case.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what do you think about the DR cliff? How's your pharmacy you're working with? Are they going to be okay?
They were losing like $25,000, $30,000 a month. So at one point, no, they were not going to be okay. The owner was kind of financing it out of his own pocket. Pharmacy's been his labor of love, not his labor of money.
Gotcha. But you turned that around, right? They're not losing that much money.
We turned that around. Now they're up 15K the last 2 months consecutively. So looking to, just keep going from here.
Do you talk to your friends? How do people feel about how many pharmacies are going to close next year because they don't have enough money to pay their DR fees?
The industry is so pessimistic. It's tough. Part of me loves the business. But not many people are saying positive things. So.
Right.
I don't try to involve myself in, it's bad enough just doing the research as a consultant to kind of stay in the know. Like I get more political stuff than I would really love to have in my daily life, but
yeah. We hope if it's too bad, that Congress will jump in with some type of,
Let's pivot,
zero interest loans or some type of saving. Yeah, not good for health in America if you had 4,000 pharmacies go out of business, because most of those would be rural. Your rural people would be where you're.
There's an article the other day. We're already creating more pharmacy deserts at the moment.
Yeah, well, and there's a move to kind of that says, hey, the simply looking at how far people are away from the pharmacy isn't correct. You need to not only look at how far they away, but what does car ownership look like in the area? Because you could have a less rural area, though, with low car ownership in a desert.
That's
I'm
fair.
not going to,
that's fair.
In the city, I'm not going to walk 4 miles to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
5 miles, whatever that line is.
Yeah,
right?
Depending on your health, you can't.
Right.
You just straight up can't.
Right. You think about, Marcia's grandmother's not walking 5 miles in the city.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In the city, you're not walking half a mile to the pharmacy.
Yeah, no. And so if you had low car ownership, then you have to be much denser to not have deserts. You could create deserts in pockets of places in the Bronx or, that kind of thing. So
Fair, yeah.
Probably not so much New York, but where, it's actually interesting. And I just kind of had that thought coupled with it. Next year, the commercial loan market is coming due to mature, and there's, all the lack of return to the workplace. So there's a bunch of like in Dayton, Ohio and Midwestern cities that have all this commercial space that are really in fear of that urban doom loop where people just kind of exit quickly. So that could really impact pharmacy deserts or creating more deserts.
Super interesting. I haven't seen any. Have you seen new statistics about how many people are back in work or working from home versus, I'd say our parking garage is full.
Yeah, here, this building specifically, yes, makes me like, I have like 8 stops on the way on the way up the elevator now. But anyway, that's just me griping about first world.
It seems like the traffic's
first world
back.
stuff.
But I think your big cities. I haven't read any.
Traffic's still bad. San Francisco's still not good.
No, yeah.
And
but they
overall,
have bigger
there's
problems, right? They got the problems with the crime and the homeless and the keeping people out of the.
Yeah, overall, like slow improvement, I think, is the last statistics I've seen everywhere. It's nothing like pre-pandemic. Everyone's trying to figure out what that is. Obviously, there's a commercial lending piece that's could be a little very slow bomb typing. Not to be all doom and gloom, though. My God.
We're watching the cloudy skies there in Miami.
Damn.
I don't know. Like, all right,
now I feel attacked.
So
we shake this off.
All right, so this gig's over,
psychedelics.
and you head to the next gig. What's kind of your top 5 things to focus on in the pharmacy? I think we've heard MedSync pretty loud and clear.
Inventory too, probably, right?
MedSync drives inventory. So yeah, inventory, combo shop, doing clinical interchanges, focusing on getting people off your cheap generic drugs that don't provide any value, maybe getting people off of some of the brand names that, like some of the inhalers that didn't have a generic alternative at one time. Now there is a generic alternative.
Right.
There's still low adoption on coverage. The PBMs have done a great job with DAW9 and stealing all the money from the independents.
Yep.
That's usually when something goes off patent. That's when we can actually make some money. But like on all the insulins, good luck. It's all brand name only. And then after that, there's such a huge opportunity with like the Medicare Advantage plans and the OTC dollars that the patients have.
Interesting. Are they doing that? You doing that in the pharmacy you're in today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is something we have.
More. Can you say more about that?
So, all the Medicare Advantage plan patients and kind of everybody in your system, if you were to focus on like the way you name your third parties, you could really get a lot of details out of it. And what I mean by that is like with Humana and Optum specifically, Pioneer doesn't have integration directly with the S3 network, but you can get a terminal separately.
Yep.
And what I've done is like identified the plans, how much their benefits are. So every time you fill a prescription for a patient, it, has a third party tag that says this patient has $230 a month OTC benefits. So when the staff is making their sync call, a simple, hey, do you need anything?
Interesting.
Like that's an easy way to get upsell.
Yeah. How did you know that 230? You had to go to the terminal and look it up, or how did you know this patient has that? Or you just know based on their plan they get that much?
So that's kind of like what I guess my specialty is I've been able to take the data that's in front of everybody in Pioneer and, a lot of it's kind of getting tips and tricks from people like Ben or others in the industry, or just playing with it myself for, at this point, I think it's like 6 years or so. But once you really take that data and properly organize it, it builds a roadmap for you to see what reimburses what and what pays what. Yes, then you have to do some extra research. Like I took the plan names or the plan ID numbers and contract ID numbers and went and Googled what's the OTC benefit? But then, yeah, I just start tagging every single one of
Gotcha.
them.
So that was, so you know what they potentially have. They may have used some already.
Fair.
You don't know what they have left.
Correct. But, for example, this store, to give people a perspective on volume, I think it does like 7,000 prescriptions a month. We've only identified maybe 15% of the patients with their OTC benefits, because it requires you to ask them for either the Medicare beneficiary ID or the last four of their social to do a Part D eligibility check and get the information you need.
Okay.
And that's a potential $200,000 in annual revenue that we weren't even touching, because we'd even have a machine to do that before.
Right.
We haven't really captured any much. To be fair, for people listening, like, the store that I've turned around and done that, they are not even close to their full potential. Like, they don't do the med sync the way that I would like them to do it. They're not making they're just starting to make the phone calls and just starting to capitalize on some of this.
Mm-hmm.
But it took 4 months for them to really turn their operations around to be ready for that.
Yeah, we had initially talked to S3 about an integration, and then they got bought, and that was shut down. But they're back talking to us again, and we'll roll out a solution with Nations Benefits.
It's now owned by Optum.
Yep. Yeah, and at that time they said it. I guess they had other priorities, but they were doing no more integrations because they said, "Hey, you can have the terminal." But I think we're back on that, getting it integrated, because I think there'd be value in having it integrated. You could store the OTC card, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Oh yeah, if you could get the OTC card stored in there, so it's part of like the, their auto pay, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
Make it easy.
That's what I want our name to be. Fantastic.
Make it easy.
All right. Well, I think we're short of time. Any other thoughts?
Closing question.
Okay.
You wrestled a 12-foot tiger shark.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
What the heck is that?
So when I was in Charleston, South Carolina with my ex-wife, I had a nonprofit around shark conservation. So we tagged and released sharks from the beach. My biggest was a little over 12 feet, and we tagged and released about 1,000 in 3 years that were all over 5 feet, and all from the beach.
So like fishing? Like I'm still so
fishing.
stupid about this. I'm like, is that so? You're fishing and reeling them in, and then
Tagging them?
you tag them and you catch and release, basically. Okay, cool. I was thinking you were cage diving or something like that. It's like, what are you doing?
Jumping out, the arms outside the cage.
Like I just look for one, like the crocodile
Grab it when
hunter.
he goes by. I've got it. Tag him.
I was thinking more crocodile hunter, where you see them in the water and you jump in. But
The release process is really the wrestling part. They their skin is like sandpaper, so if they rub their skin the wrong way against you, and they're not very happy that they're getting a hook taken out of them or all that, you usually leave with wounds every time. So there is some wrestling aspect for sure. Certain species will literally roll themselves around in circles trying to get back into the water in what we used to call death rolls, because if you were near them when they were doing this, you were going to go home very hurt.
Here, I got it.
Well, it's been fun. If people want to
How they find you?
hear more about Stanley, it's you're on LinkedIn. They can follow you on LinkedIn. It's Pharmacy Stan, right?
Pharmacy Stan on LinkedIn or any socials.
Any social? Do you have a website?
PharmacyStan.com.
PharmacyStan.com. All right. It's been fun. Hopefully we'll get to see you at a trade show. You start making money and go to a trade show.
Or
stop spending that in all the nightclubs in Miami.
We'll see you at a pharmacy. Either way.
All right. Talk to you later.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stan. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Pharmacy podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more pharmacy professionals like you.